pleased to have Carole Railton here with me, one of our super speakers for the NCH conference that's coming up. Lovely to meet you and to have you on board, Carole. And I wonder, I'll just hand straight over to you if I can. If you could, you're going to be talking on online body language and rapport, which is fantastically important nowadays. So perhaps if you could start with a bit of a background and how you found yourself working or designed yourself to work in this area, please.
Well, it's quite a dramatic arrival, really. When I was 23, my mother was dying and I was nursing her. And she said to me, "You know, don't you?" And I humoured her by saying, "Yes, I do." And she told me that I had another sister and that my father had been married before. And for 23 years, I'd been lied to. In that moment, I decided I would never be lied to again. Now, I started learning about body language, researching it, but I was already working for the large American companies, traveling around the world. So I had quite a lot of time when I was flying things to look things up. But I had no idea that you could earn money from this, absolutely none. So, the reason I was flying around the world is I'd been highly successful in sales for companies like Xerox, Reed Employment. And the reason I've been highly successful is because I understood personality styles and body language. And I tried to buy a company with two other directors that we were working for. Unfortunately, we didn't get that company when the chairman found out who was trying to buy it. He was all systems go until he realised it was an internal buyout. So I didn't have a job, basically. I resigned. I didn't have a job. And I started my own company, which was well overdue. And the first company I started was Living Success, which was a company to help individuals have more success in their business life. But it spilled over into personal life because you can't really separate the two. Yeah. And then I realized that, if you like, the bigger money was working for corporates. So that's what I started to do. And I formed another company called Life After Branding. And that was very successful. I've worked in 47 countries doing this work. So it's not a bad life that I've had, really. So now I do this full time. And the sort of things I do with corporates is trainings for groups of people and also with CEOs. I do a lot of one-to-one coaching with CEOs who maybe are very good at talking to their staff, which might be 10 to 300, but talking to more than that, they just can't sit on that platform. So that's how it started. And then people realized that I was quite good at branding, because branding is a behavior, just like any other behavior. What do you want your brand to look like in the marketplace? What behaviors do you want your clients to have? So along the way, I worked for people like Third Space, which is a gym, which is expanding. Before it was owned by Reebok. And I've got life membership as a result, which is a pretty nice thing to have. You just go to Piccadilly down to the theatre, and I can just pop in for a shower and 3 bags full. It's brilliant. So I think I've had a really good life. I love
that. I love how the trajectory of your story, screeching halt of that revelation through that's never going to catch me out again. And I'm so happy, and I've had a brilliant life. That's a lovely trajectory to be able to report back on. And it's such a huge topic range. So if you wouldn't mind, for the conference, what part of that will you be talking about?
Well, to be honest, I'm more intuitive, so I have some topics, but I'll go with the flow. But what I spoke to Sophie about was how there is a change in body language, and I'm now developing new body language. And that change has come about through us changing behaviours again. We've been sitting like we are now, talking screen to screen. We've been wearing masks, which has prevented facial reading, or full facial reading anyway. We haven't been shaking hands, so we've had no physical contact. And as you probably know, children are finding it difficult to form relationships now because they've been at home, they haven't been at school. There's quite a few knock-on effects from this last 2 years pandemic. not least with body language, because if I take myself as an example, I'm an extrovert. You'd never have guessed, would you really? Colours behind me, colours on me. I'm a real extrovert. And for extroverts, this is really tough, this sitting still, being on screen, being within a certain ratio of viewing. It's not easy, because we naturally use our bodies when we talk, our arms, our hands, that sort of thing. Yeah. So introverts have had quite a good run this last 2 years, but times are changing. So I'm looking at what's happened, as I've just outlined here, but it goes into much more depth, and what that's meant for body language. And if we look at how not seeing the person affects life in general, we'll realise that this has been quite catastrophic for people like me who read body language. I mean, Alexandra Graham Bell in my book has got a lot to answer for. That's why we have telephone rage, because we can't see the person we're talking to. This was a new invention, telephone rage. And it's quite, in my book, I understand that, because part of the communication is verbal, part of the communication is visual, and in that visual arena is the body language. So we've been struggling a bit the last few years, and we need to break out of that. And there's a few things we can do to help us do that, really.
Brilliant. So when you're talking about it at the conference, will you be giving some guidelines and some tips?
Well, I was thinking about this, and I thought, if this went well, this interview with you and I, maybe you want to interview me. Maybe I don't do a full-on talk, because you'll know more about what you and the other therapists are looking for. I'd be happy to do that, and you can direct me in any way you like. If I'm not happy, I can normally get out of it anyway. So I'd be happy to do that. And I tell you, someone who does do that, that's the guy who says you're fired. He doesn't do talks at all. Right. He does that sort of thing. He does interview, which I quite like doing, because there's interaction. Yes, because sure. I would be talking to a screen. There won't be anyone here. Now, in this scenario, I'm getting a response immediately.
Absolutely.
And I need that. I need that. So can we think about that?
Absolutely. I can check how they feel about that back at the organisation, shall we say?
Yes.
Bear with me. As mentioned, my dog is now just up, and he thinks it'd be a great time to leave the room. So just bear with me. I'll let him out, and then I'll be back with you.
Okay.
Go away. Do not come and hassle me again. The risk, of course, is that he comes and claws at the door in a second. Right. Okay. So given that we... Yes, carry on.
Sorry. So the idea when I speaking to Sophie was that we'd look at what average normal behaviours were and sort of things people know about body language, and look at how that's had to change in order for us to get information, or, as we were discussing, to be more impactful in your presentation. I don't want to give away any tips really now, because I want to save them for the talk, but we expect certain things of body language. We make comments all the time. I mean, for instance, no one has ever said anything different to these two responses when I tell people what I do. They either say, okay, tell me what I'm thinking, all right?
Right.
And the other response is, does Teresa or Terry over there fancy me? That's what, it's just standard. People say, oh, you can tell what I'm thinking. Tell me what I'm thinking. It's so interesting that people always respond in the same way. I don't know, maybe dentists have the same sort of issues. I don't know. But I find that quite intriguing. And I did a big talk for Google London. And I don't know if you've ever taught there, but the stage is enormous. It's like a runway, basically.
Right.
And you walk on the stage and there's a picture of my face blown up. It's bigger than my body when I walk on stage. It's my face. It was really interesting. And we did really well. I could make, even though there was a large audience, I could make it interactive because I was on stage and I could see everybody. It was really, really good. But when I was there, it was looking at the difference between men and women. So a lot of behaviours are different with men and women.
Yep.
You know, and it's based on hormones. It's quite a deep subject. Body language, it's not just about blinking and folding arms.
Yep.
It's quite a deep subject when you dive in. And we have different hormones that behave in different ways. So, yeah. Do I give you an example, or do I say that?
I'd love an example.
Okay. Okay, so one of the ways, I'm an exaggerated version of this, so I won't use that one, I'll use another. One of the things, no, I'll use that. Women make more movements than men, okay? Mm-hmm. I've been in this business quite a long time, 25 years, so I've validated it, not only in this country, but quite a few others. What happens, I do a training course and I ask a man, maybe just in the corridor, you know, a cleaner or a porter, to walk around a table, and we measure and count the number of body movements they make. A random woman, you know, a waitress, a cleaner, something again, if we're in a hotel, and we count the body movements, and women always make more moves than men. The problem for women is when you become senior in an organization, you make less movement. If you think about the Queen, it's a very sedate move. You won't see a CEO running down the corridor with a piece of paper, if paper exists anymore. You just don't see that. Yeah. So women have an adjustment to make, and men do, to accept it. Sorry, that sounded quite sexist, didn't it?
No, yeah, but it opens up so many questions, doesn't it, around should women with aspirations in a corporate environment start to modify their behavior? Should it be brought to awareness so that we don't need to modify our behavior, and, for want of a better term, you can be more woman in a work environment. That, again, I guess if you start talking gender differences, you run the risk of sounding or having sexist sound bites if you're not careful. Yes. But yeah, that's fascinating. What am I thinking?
Well, it is. And I mean, I did run a couple of companies. As you heard, I tried to buy one with two other directors. I was managing director of that company. I tried to buy it. So even when we had a company event when I was running this company, and I did a speech at the beginning, welcome to all the clients. It was a golf in Surrey. So it was an upmarket event. Okay. So I did hello, 3 bags full, and this is my marketing director. She's going to run the event. And if you've got any questions, just ask any of us. At the end of the event, this guy, he'd been there all day playing golf. He's one of our clients. And he said to me, "Who are you, by the way? Who are you, by the way?" I thought, crikey. And I said, "Oh, I just make the tea. I've got dressed up for today." And he said, "Oh, that makes sense." It was hysterical. And then right at the end of the day, I gave the trophy. He'd been talking to me at the bar. So he never, ever thought that I could be anything other than subservient, really. And it's a great story, and as you can see, it still sticks in my mind. And that's probably why a lot of my success was overseas, because I ran the Middle East sales and marketing for Xerox Corporation, which is the American part of Xerox, and I was managing 9 countries sales and marketing. And at that time, I mean, this was over 25 years ago, all right? So at that time, there were very few women flying first class on planes, unless they were attached, and this is sexist, so you could cut this out if you want.
No,
unless they were attached to what I considered at the time fat-bellied businessmen, and they were what was called at the time bimbettes. I mean, you couldn't say that sort of thing.
Yeah,
so they weren't used to women who were running the show traveling in first class. So I used to get extra goodies, like a crate of Cointreau or something, just anything. They actually said they didn't know how to treat me on the plane. So times have changed.
Bring me stuff.
Yes, thank you. Oh, yes, I'm going to a party. And you could wine. It was fantastic. So there are all those things were going on, and they have to change. And then getting back to what I was just talking about, we need to be aware. Your question was, do we need to be aware? Both sides need to be aware.
Yep.
I did a lot of training for the chartered CPA, Chartered Public Accountants. I was part of their you get more qualifications if you go on Carole's session.
Yeah.
It was really interesting, because you'd expect in an accountancy environment for everybody, well, I did, okay, this was my preconception, that there would be far more introverts than extroverts. And that wasn't the case, because a good accountant is a creative accountant like mine, who's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And so, we have these ideas about jobs, situations and people, but we need to roll back. We need to be more open and wait and see what happens and see how we can support each other.
Yeah. I love the fact that you're the CPD for the CPA. That's something to go on your resume, isn't it?
Yes.
So I'm very aware we're running through the time. If you imagine that the delegates who are turning up, what would you love them to take away from hearing your presentation?
I'd love them to be more interested in body language and how it affects their life and their consultancy as therapists. I would really love them to understand a couple of tips that I'll give and be able to utilize them straight away, and then let me know how they've got on and how perhaps there's been changes in a scenario that they've been stuck in.
Yeah.
And I'd like them to understand if they don't adapt, there's going to be more pain, because we have a shorter time to influence people, to be impactful. And we need to think more quickly, we need to react more quickly, and we need to support or encourage the person we're dealing with in a shorter period of time. And that's what I'd like to happen in general terms, really.
Yeah,
and of course, one other thing, I'd like them to work with me or buy my book. Can't be more blatant than that.
No, absolutely. The future of body language. Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, well, fantastic.
So is that, are we finishing? Yes.
Well, I think you've definitely piqued my interest. So obviously I'm going to be there. I'm really looking forward to it. I've had the privilege of interviewing a couple of people, and it's lovely to just hear people who are clearly experts in their field, and you're so enthusiastic about your topic. It's and you make it so accessible. So it's brilliant. And thank you for this time, and thank you for being part of the conference itself. That's going to be amazing.
Good. Thank you very much. I'll see you on Saturday, the 25th.